to the CBA Leaders Podcast, a resource provided for ministry leaders serving churches in the Chilton Baptist Association. Our association exists to strengthen and connect churches to complete the Great Commission. The goal of this podcast is to provide news and announcements related to associational ministries and to provide helpful content to encourage you in your ministry leadership as you serve to make disciples of Jesus in Chilton County and beyond. Thanks again for listening. Let's jump into this week's episode. Hello, pastors and church leaders and church members of the Chilton Baptist Association. This is 5 things to know for this week, and you'll notice that adding this onto the podcast, so we'll shift this now. This content will be coming out as part of the CBA Leaders Podcast. I thought, hey, if I'm going to be sitting down and doing this, I might as well capture the audio and put it out as a podcast episode as well. So the podcast will start to have 2 episodes each week, one focusing on a particular topic and having some conversation about that and incorporating some interviews at different points on the podcast. So that'll be the first episode each week. But then also toward the end of the week, usually on Friday, I'll put out a 5 things to know. And the purpose of this 5 things to know is just to try to help you stay informed. I know, we all know that we have this onslaught of information coming at us all the time, and it can be very difficult to try to wade through all of the stuff and find the things that are really important for us to know. So the things that I'm passing along to you are things that I have found helpful in the past week or 2. And I just pile those things up in order to pass them along to you. If I find something helpful, I think, man, I want to pass it along to you all who are serving in either a position of pastoral leadership in your church, or maybe you're a staff member or working with students or music, or you're a church member, you're a deacon, whatever. Just content that I think is helpful to those who are engaged in church life and working in the context of the local church. And so 5 things. A lot of times these will be links that I'm pointing you to in articles, and you can find the links to these in the description of the video, or if you're listening on the podcast, it'll be in the description of the episode. The links will be there for you as well. So this week, some things that I have come across that I felt were helpful to pass along to you was, first, this article from Baptist Press on helping yourself so you can help others. An article by Mark Dance. It was published on Baptist Press. And, this is something that, if I'm honest, I have not always been the greatest in following this. I think sometimes those of us who serve in ministry, we can easily kind of fall into the trap of what you might call a savior complex, where we want to serve people, and that's an awesome motivation. We want to help people. We want to even sacrifice ourselves in order to help others. And there are certainly times where we are called to do that, right? Jesus did tell us to take up our cross and follow him. But I think as well that there's a balance in this. You remember on the airplane, if you've ever flown before or fly very much, you know that they tell you to if something happens and the cabin loses pressure, you're supposed to do what? You're supposed to put your mask on first before you help those around you. It's counterintuitive, but there's a reason for it. And that is that if you don't get your mask on, you're probably not going to be able to help other people. And so I think this principle is very important for us serving in vocational ministry, that we got to take care of ourselves. Like self-care is not a sin. And you want to make sure that you're at the same time, yes, you're going to sacrifice. Yes, there's going to be moments of sacrifice. There's going to be times where you are called to sacrifice for the sake of others and to serve them. But let's be careful that we're not running ourselves in the ground, so to speak, and kind of killing ourselves and thinking that that's somehow honorable. Sometimes we're just making poor choices and not allocating our time the right way. So anyway, encourage you to read this article and let that challenge you to make sure that you are taking care of yourself. and we can't pour from an empty cup, as they say. So, helpful article to think about. The next article here is something helpful as we are entering into. Of course, it's kind of already been going on, but the election season, in particular, the presidential election. This is another article that I found on Baptist Press recently that is a prayer guide for the 2024 presidential election. So, man, just such a polarizing time right now in our culture. Politics, man, it just is so divisive. It really can stir up some nasty things in our hearts, in our lives, and so it's a challenging season for us to walk through with conviction, but also with kindness toward those that we disagree with. So we definitely want to go through the election season in a prayerful attitude and just dependence upon the Lord. And so some great things here, some prompts. This would be great to share with your congregation, with some other friends, just things that you can be praying about. And this might be something good to kind of cut out, tuck it in your Bible there, and pray for some of these different things each day as you have your own time with the Lord and spend time in His Word. The next article I want to draw your attention to is some new things. I've seen these coming out recently. You may have seen them as well, but I've really enjoyed them. They are what are being called CP stories. And so you can find these on the SBC website, sbc.net. And, one of our kind of defining marks as the Southern Baptist Convention is our cooperative effort, right? Our cooperating together as independent churches. We are independent. We're not really a traditional denomination in that terms, that there is no hierarchy. The association can't tell your church what to do. The state convention can't tell your church what to do. The SBC office in Nashville can't tell your church what to do, right? You are an independent church, and you voluntarily associate yourself through your cooperative giving to be a part of what is called the Southern Baptist Convention, the Alabama Baptist Convention, the Chilton Baptist Association. You associate yourself voluntarily with those different entities that are, of course, all working together and cooperating together toward a common mission, the Great Commission. And so our program for that is the cooperative program, and it's where our funds are pooled together as we give them. And the idea is that we can accomplish a lot more by pooling our resources together than we could otherwise if we just kind of did our own thing with our finances and resources. And so there is a downside, I will say, sometimes to the cooperative program, and that is that we don't always have great connection, relational connection with our missionaries, with those that we're supporting. And so I really appreciate these CP stories because they help us see that when you give to the cooperative program, you're not giving, yes, you're giving to this program, but man, it just means so much more to know that money, some of that money is making its way to people like Joseph and Kristen Gibbons, who are serving in Las Vegas, Nevada, right? And hearing their story, hearing about what God is doing through your giving to the cooperative program, it just really makes it meaningful. And so it's important, I think, not to forget the stories like this that are behind the cooperative program and why we give to the cooperative program. So I encourage you to go over and check that out. You can notice there on the website that you can sort, right, resource categories, and you can go to CP stories and you can find tons of stories just like that one that I just looked at, where you can see and hear and give these stories to the people in your church so they know what does it mean when we give to this thing called the cooperative program. Well, we're giving to support things like these people who are doing awesome ministry different places around the country and around the world. So just thought that was cool. I want to share it with you. Check those out. Consider sharing them with your congregation. And as you talk about cooperative program, don't just talk about it as a program, but talk about these people that are supported through the efforts of the cooperative program. So next is this article. This is from James Clear. James Clear is, to my knowledge, not a believer, that I know of, but he is kind of a productivity expert here recently. He's a New York Times bestseller. Some of you may have heard of his book, Atomic Habits. It's one that's been helpful to me. Without going and reading maybe an entire book, as I know not everyone may be prone to do. You may not be a productivity nerd, as I can tend to be sometimes. But there's this article is really helpful, and it's probably for some of you not a concept that's new, but it's this Eisenhower box. And I'll just show you the picture here of the old Eisenhower box. It's called the Eisenhower box, based off of this quote from Dwight Eisenhower, where he said, "What is important is seldom urgent, and what is urgent is seldom important." And so this is a helpful article and a helpful grid to think through as a pastor, as a church leader, as just an individual. What is most important and what is urgent, and what is important but not urgent, and what is not important and not urgent, and what is not important and what is urgent. And how do we respond to those four categories as they come up in our life? This grid can be tremendously helpful to get some stuff maybe off your plate that you just shouldn't be doing, but that other people could take care of. And so helpful. So I put this in here for you for your consideration. Give it a quick read. See if you think this tool would be helpful for you as you seek to balance life and ministry. And kind of related to that, and almost where we first started, about making sure you're taking care of yourself and you're not trying to pour from an empty cup, right? Is this article from Carey Nieuwhof, 9 Signs That You're Burning Out in Leadership. Okay. I really appreciate this. I think this, again, is an important issue. Burnout. I'll just raise my hand. I'm learning this to lead from vulnerability and not just kind of highlight your strengths, as we can all tend to do. Hey, I've been there, guys. I have been there in burnout. I've had those moments in my ministry where I was laying in the bed for 2 days and did not get out of bed because I was so just cooked from pouring myself out in ministry, and the stresses of ministry piled up and led me to some difficult places, right? And so that's something where we can all get. If you haven't been there, you'll probably find yourself there, but the whole goal would be to never get there, and let's just to stay out of that category of burnout. So this is a really helpful article. If you know anything about Carey Nieuwhof, he has been through this himself and went through a pretty intense period of burnout in his life. So he's talking from his personal experience in this article. Thought it was really helpful. He gives some real great things to kind of look for, to say, hey, am I on the verge of burnout? Just to tease a couple of these for you. Number one, has your motivation faded, right? Do you find yourself still excited about ministry, or is the motivation just gone? Is there no passion and no excitement anymore for ministry? If that's the case, you might be close to burnout or in the middle of burnout. Number two, is your main emotion numbness? We've talked about this in previous 5 Things to Know, another article on this. Do you feel kind of numb, where you're no longer feeling the highs or the lows? This emotional numbness can be a sign that you are experiencing burnout, okay? And let me just say as a side note here too, if this is you, one of my biggest things that I wanted to do when I became a director of missions or associational mission strategist is serve pastors and shepherd pastors like you who are going through difficulties. I may not be the most brilliant strategist of missions and may not be the greatest in other areas, but I really care deeply about you guys who are serving in ministry, if you're serving in a role of church leadership, and I want to help you and I want to serve you. I'm not a counselor by any means, but I can be a listening ear, and I am trained as a coach and a gospel coach, and I want you to know that I'm available to you and want to serve you. So if you want somebody to talk to and you feel like you're on the verge of burnout and you're feeling this lack of motivation, and you're feeling numbness, emotional numbness, and you say, man, I want to talk to somebody about this, then I am here for you to listen without judging you, and to just be a listening ear and pray for you and be a partner with you in that. So please reach out to me. But take a look at this article, wrestle with it, see if it's something that you need to give attention to if you are getting close to what we might call burnout. So that's it for this week for 5 things to know. I hope that you find some of these resources helpful. Hope that you have a great Lord's Day of worship with your church family. And if I can serve you in any way, please reach out to me. Let me know how I can be praying for you. Love each of you and praying God's richest blessings on you as you head into another weekend and another time of worship with your church family.